welcome. You are listening to the Native Business Podcast, and my name is Gary Davis, and this is
Carmen Davis.
And we are your hosts today for the fifth
Native Business Podcast.
Number 5.
Yes.
This has gone by kind of fast.
It has. Time flies when you're having fun.
So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Episode 5 is where we are today. We have an amazing guest today, a very accomplished businesswoman from the great state of Alaska. Obviously, we want to remind people that obviously, I've said obviously twice within the last few seconds. This must be my word of the day. If you are listening to this, you've found some place to listen to the podcast. But we want to make sure that you know that it's available on more than just one platform. Wherever you're listening to it, whether it be Apple Podcast or whether it be Google Play, Stitcher, SoundCloud, Spotify, that you subscribe to your podcast platform of choice and make sure that Native Business is something that you get every time we upload it, that you get a notification that it's ready and that you can listen to it. And that will make your life much easier.
Yes.
Because that's what we're ultimately very concerned about, is making sure that you get this amazing podcast. And of course, give us a like on social media. Follow us on social media. Carmen, do you know our social media platforms?
I do. Well, first, you can go to the website as well, nativebusinessmag.com, to find...
First and foremost, might I add.
To find amazing stories. And
daily content.
Yes, daily content. Our Facebook is Native Business Magazine.
Correct.
And our Instagram handle is Native Biz Mag. Cool. You can find us on YouTube, and you have to search Native Business Magazine because we do not have enough subscribers yet, but we are confident that we are going to get some more so we can get our own page name.
I'm fully confident.
So please help us out.
So, and again, we've talked about this before. You cannot get your own URL at YouTube until you have enough subscribers.
Yes.
So as we've talked about subscribing to things, there might not be, aside from this important podcast, any place more important for you to subscribe to Native Business than on YouTube.
Yes, please do.
And you can also listen to the podcast on YouTube.
Exactly. That's what I was
getting
ready to say.
We just want to make sure that every time we upload a podcast, you get 17 different notifications.
We're here to serve you.
That's right. You're not going to miss an episode of the Native Business Podcast. So thank you for tuning in again. Thank you for listening. And I think one of the things that you always like to read are the comments. So wherever you're listening to, please leave us a comment.
Yes.
You can actually email us directly, podcast@nativebusinessmag.com.
You can also write a review as well on iTunes. That would be much appreciated.
Or wherever you listen to your podcast. So with that, why not? We've talked about that this podcast will not be just you and I having a conversation about business in Indian country. That the most important thing here is to let other folks from across Indian country weigh in and for you to meet these people, these amazing entrepreneurs, business people, tribal leaders. We've had some amazing podcasts already, ones that were taped live at the summit. There will be more of those coming your way. But we wanted to get into it so that people don't think that we're lying.
Of course we're not lying.
We wanted to make sure that people really know we absolutely are going to have these amazing business people.
Absolutely.
On the show. And with that, there's no one, I don't know if I know anybody as vivacious, passionate, exciting, career-driven, while taking care of her family at the same time, very involved in the community, very accomplished, who owns her own business. Ladies and gentlemen, I'm talking about none other than Joy Huntington. And I'm going to, before we go to her, she's with us today. I want to read a little bit about Joy and her company. Uqaqti Consulting is a statewide communications and community relations firm serving Alaska, and it serves a variety of public and private sector clients. Joy Huntington, Uqaqti Consulting's president and principal consultant, has lived in rural Alaska for 15 years and has an in-depth understanding of socioeconomic, cultural, environmental, and political issues that face rural communities. Uqaqti Consulting brings positive energy and promotes meaningful relationships for projects and companies across Alaska through effective communications, outreach, and facilitation efforts. And we'll get into another huge component of something she just launched. I think she actually announced it at our summit. She
at the Native Business Summit.
One of our Native Business Top 50. Ladies and gentlemen, without any further ado, please welcome to the Native Business Podcast, Joy Huntington. Joy, are you with us?
I am here. Hello, Gary and Carmen. I'm so happy to join you today. Thank you for inviting me on the podcast.
How is the amazing state of Alaska?
The state of Alaska is kind of on fire, literally. We have fires burning across the state, literally and figuratively. And so that's been an issue, but today it's not smoky in Fairbanks where I live. So that's a blessing. And I'm kind of concerned for some of our villages. My grandfather's village, Rampart, has several fires burning pretty closely. And so we're watching those, and I'm a little concerned about that. But otherwise, we're having a beautiful summer, pretty high temperatures. It hit at least 90 in Fairbanks. And so contrary to popular belief, we actually do have some pretty amazing summer weather. And so it's otherwise been going really well. And people are out on the rivers and out enjoying themselves and doing lots of, berry picking and fishing. So it's good to see everyone getting their harvest and everything this summer. So, it's going well aside from the fires.
I don't want to get right into this, but I don't know officially what the state bird of Alaska is, but I know that we had the pleasure several years ago of venturing up to a friend of yours and ours, Greta. Mm-hmm. She has a cabin up in Koyukon River. Am I correct?
Yep. On her lodge on the Koyukon River, yes.
Yes, and we had so much joy seeing so many of these state birds congregating in one place that we had to wear mosquito nets. And I'm being facetious here. I'm being very sarcastic. There's no mosquitoes out right now, are there?
Not really in Fairbanks. There's not a lot, but as soon as you step outside of city limits and get to any more of the kind of more rural areas,
it's state
you
birds.
Definitely, it's
everywhere you can see.
you'll get fully attacked, and they're aggressive. Definitely.
They're very tough.
So
they're very tough.
Yeah, everything.
I'm not going to lie.
More aggressive in Alaska.
I'm not going to lie. I wore one of those little hats with the nets and they still got through.
I remember.
Yes. And
those are my blackmail photos of you, Carmen.
Yes, they are. And, I would look at my net and I would see, like a gang of mosquitoes kind of plotting on the other side of the wall, so to speak, the net being the wall, trying to figure out how they were going to break in just so that they could get at me. And, It was. They also can take a punch. Very, very, very. I know this is also important to what it is that you do, but it was so amazing to have such a beautiful experience there on the Koyukon River, and of course, I think we laughed the whole time.
Yes, we did.
We were there, and it was such an awesome opportunity to get to know you. And of course, Greta and all the other great folks that were there at that gathering that we had, and she was such a gracious host. So, let's talk about you. That's why you're on the show. You have done such amazing things: the Alaska Federation of Natives President's Award for Future Leadership, the Doyon Limited Future Leadership Award. You have, of course, been featured in Native Business Magazine. You were one of the 2019 Native Business Top 50 Entrepreneurs. Is there anything, ladies and gentlemen, that she doesn't do and hasn't been recognized for? But, let's talk a little bit about what your business is. Talk a little bit about what you have created there and how it's helping folks.
Yeah, absolutely. So, and thank you for giving an overview of Uqaqti Consulting. And I really want to emphasize that, it's a lot of people assume that you need to go into a successful business with very detailed plans and be thinking ahead for years before you actually get started, laying groundwork. And in my situation, it's sort of unique, but I don't think it's really that unique. I honestly didn't intend to start this business. It kind of happened. There was an opportunity for me to work with one of our regional tribal organizations, Tanana Chiefs Conference, here in the interior. And I had tried to start a business a few years before, doing like motivational speaking, working with youth across the state. And that was not, I didn't really get much traction because there wasn't a lot of contractual opportunities to do that. People wanted me to do that as a volunteer, which was great, but as a business, it really didn't float. It didn't really, have the kind of traction and momentum that I hoped it would. And so I pulled back from that and just continued to kind of look for jobs at different organizations. And I had a very young, brand new daughter and a 2-year-old. And so I was looking for, security and stability that a full-time job would bring, with benefits and all of that good stuff. And along the way, though, an opportunity presented itself to take on a contract. And at the time, I felt like this was just a one-time deal. This was in 2011. This is a one-time deal. I would do this as a contractor. It was actually a state lobbying contract for our regional tribal organization. And I felt like I was just getting my foot in the door, and then eventually that would lead to a full-time position with the organization. And so I really stepped into it without really having any long-term plans set. I didn't have any huge goals associated with that, but I just decided to, run with this opportunity that was in front of me. And within about a year, I had a request to take on another contract. And then in another year, I had another request. And so as I continued on, the request for me to help organizations, state agencies, different projects who needed help with their outreach and relationship building and facilitation. And that's something that I had done for a long time, government relations. I had worked in DC before. I had, worked with different people in Juneau, in the state legislature. And so I had a background kind of in communications, not a degree in communications, but I'm not sure, and I think you both have picked up on this. I really honestly love people, and I really enjoy connecting with people from different backgrounds. And I think that's always been something that, I genuinely am really excited about, talking to different groups. And so I bring that enthusiasm and genuine excitement to any project that I work on. And I feel like that in and of itself kind of started this little, to go back to Alaska burning up, started this little wildfire that kind of started to spread, and more people started requesting for me to, support them on different projects. And so that's kind of how Uqaqti got its start back in 2011. And again, before long, I realized that I'm really doing something here. And this has become, my reputation grew, my network grew. Of course, it's all about people. Everything we do in life comes back to the relationships that we've built, and the quality of our businesses, the quality of our lives really come back to the quality of our relationships, both like personally and professionally. And so as I built these strong relationships across different sectors of the state, different industries, different regions, that just, kind of propelled my business forward and upwards at a rate that almost I was surprised by. I felt like, just keeping up with the growth has been part of my challenge, and hiring people and trying to grow as our demand grew, and as we ventured into new industries as well, while keeping the quality high. And so that's kind of the Uqaqti now. And I did change the name to Uqaqti in 2015. It was Huntington Consulting prior to that. But I wanted the name to reflect me more and kind of really be something a little bit more personal. And so I actually was given, Uqaqti means one who speaks in Inupiaq, and I'm Athabascan, of course, but I was presenting in Kotzebue, and 2 borough assembly members from the Northwest Arctic Borough, Vern Cleveland and Clyde Ramos, after it was my first day there, during a break, they kind of motioned me over, and I thought I may have, disrespected them unintentionally, and they were going to scold me. I didn't really know what to expect. I was a little nervous, and they said, "We want to give you a name." And this is a huge honor. And to be given a name my first day in their region, my first day in Kotzebue was like beyond belief for me. But they said, we want to name you. And they were trying to figure out what to name me. And one of them said, well, she talks a lot. And the other one was like, yeah, she does. So we decided to name you Uqaqti, which means one who speaks or speaker. And so it fits. It is, and it fits so perfectly with who I am and what I do and what my company really is about. And so I changed the name very proudly to Uqaqti Consulting. And now it's kind of become its own brand. People are excited to wear the hats. And, it's like, people sometimes don't even know what we do at the business, but they want to be a part of it. They want the hat. They want to wear, the merchandise, and, they like the feeling of it, the vibe that I've created with Uqaqti. And it's really
name.
About positivity. Yeah, definitely. And it's really about positivity, building relationships, bringing people together and, helping to find that common ground between whether it's a legislator, like a state senator from Anchorage, and a small tribe from the Yukon Flats, bringing different people together that may not have had the opportunity to connect, and trying to create an environment and a tone that we're all more likely to get to know each other and to kind of let our guard down and find those common ground areas. And just build that rapport and hopefully build relationships. And so, I feel like that underlying that is all this like positive mission that people do kind of get attracted to. It's like, I don't really know what this is, but I like it and it feels good and I know it's positive. And so I think that's kind of been a part of creating the momentum that we've had.
Give the folks an example, to the degree that you can, of maybe a project that you're proud of or that you've worked on to help move the needle forward there in Alaska.
So I'll go back to my first contract. I think initially the tribal organizations and the tribes went into their Juneau advocacy not really sure what to expect from the legislators. And of course, our largest population in the state is in Anchorage. And so I feel like in some of the leadership positions were not typically legislators that were very familiar with rural Alaska or tribal governments. And so I think there was this kind of maybe question or assumption, and this is statewide often, that the Anchorage legislators or the urban legislators will not go to bat for us, or they may not go to bat for tribes. And so I took it upon myself to kind of, and I don't, I guess I'm a very optimistic person, and I always kind of think the best of people and have a hopeful approach to things. And so I went to Juneau really intending to build strong relationships with some of the maybe urban legislators that don't typically go to bat for tribes. And what I was really amazed by is after a few years of being there consistently and really taking the time to build those relationships, I was amazed by a few different scenarios where, some of the commissioners and legislators that weren't typically seen as the you could say pro-Native issue legislators and leaders, really going out of their way to help tribes. And to, in one situation, there was a clinic that needed to be built in the village of Uqaqti, and that was one of my number one tasks that session. And it was actually a Fairbanks legislator that he was on the finance committee that had his staff find a place in the budget that we could try to fit the Uqaqti clinic into the state budget. And it was just a moment of not surprise, but just feeling so, I guess, fulfilled in that moment that someone was going out of their way, that really their voter, their constituency was no connection to Uqaqti, and they had no reason of their own to kind of go out of their way, but they were. And so that's kind of, I guess, an example of, when you build those relationships and you take the time to really genuinely get to know people and do that groundwork, then, they may surprise you, and people that you would initially not expect to go to bat for our tribes or go to bat for our Native communities. You may find them being your biggest supporters if you've built those relationships. And if you've kind of approached things with an open mind and an open heart. And so I guess that's one example. And others, I think just kind of, on one project, people in the villages were, kind of concerned about a proposed mineral exploration project in the first few years of the project, visiting their communities. And on the last round of visits, it was our 6th year of going out, the last round of visits, 3 of the local village corporations all asked the same question: how can we invest and become a partner in this project? And it was just a remarkable shift in, this is something that is a threat to us, to something that we want to be involved in, and we want to help make this project the best that it can to serve our communities as well as kind of the larger picture.
Do you think sometimes that it becomes more, like the natural position sometimes in Indian country when it comes to dealing with things that we're not familiar with or that we have preconceived notions about is a position of resistance that sometimes gets in the way of looking at the opportunity potential? Have you experienced that? Do you feel like that sometimes it takes somewhat a lot of work to get through just the preconceived notions to get to what potentially might be arguably an opportunity? Absolutely.
No, I think there's definitely a fear of kind of the unknown, and it's just sort of like in our lives as well, when we're approached with something that we don't fully understand yet. If we have to put it in a category of this is either a positive or a negative, I think we, sort of human nature, especially when you've had a history of being taken advantage of as a community, or a history of, outside influences having negative impacts, I think you're kind of hardwired to see something new and something that is coming from, kind of an outside entity or agency or company as a threat. And I think that's just, that's been ingrained in our communities, and for pretty valid reasons. And so, I think when you approach that situation though with empathy, and you try to understand where they're at and where they're coming from, and build up that familiarity and build up that education of what this is and what this project means. It doesn't mean that people will automatically, like what you're doing, but at least I believe the immediate reaction will kind of dissipate, and people will, at least come to a point where they have a more open mind. And when you do have that open mind, then you can start to see, okay, is this actually an opportunity? Is this something that, could bring positive benefits? And you start weighing those a little bit more, I guess a little bit more, without that preconceived, assumption or judgment in the very beginning. So, and I think that's where things get really productive, and you start talking about the issues that are of most concern, and what is, what are the potential benefits. But you can't have that productive dialogue until people are more kind of open-minded and comfortable in at least having a conversation with you.
If we're going to move forward, it's really about finding the ways that we can build bridges. Mm-hmm. And not to use this analogy because obviously it resonates so many places right now about building walls, but it's more about building bridges, not walls.
Yeah.
And with that, Do you feel, because the things that you're talking about right now really come from a skill set of communication and being able to communicate ideas, thoughts, opportunity, potential, absolutely the threats, the things that people have to pay attention to, but bringing it back down to finding commonality. And do you think in the work that you do, where that's such a huge part of it, do you think oftentimes that's undervalued?
Yes and no. It depends on, I definitely feel like there are organizations that, feel like, oh, well, we don't need a facilitator. We don't need someone to kind of focus on the process. We're just going to go in and kind of do our thing. And I think that definitely is out there. But if you look at how successful Uqaqti has been, and the requests that we get from tribes, from the federal government, from the state government, from the private sector, the fact that I continuously get requests to go out and work on projects at all these different levels in different parts of the state, I think it does tell me that people do value that, and they do know. And if they're, and I guess usually it's sort of referral or word of mouth, or I'm facilitating. A lot of these projects that I work on are kind of high profile in some sense. And so there'll be people that kind of see it firsthand. They see what it feels like and what it looks like when there's a facilitator that's kind of creating a productive and positive space and focusing on those relationships and how we're talking to each other and trying to kind of put all this positivity into it. When they see the difference with that, I feel like the next time they automatically say, okay, that's what we want. That's what we need. But until they see that, of course there's, skeptics that are just like, no, we don't need that. It wouldn't really change the conversation. But yeah, I think ultimately in Alaska, it's kind of a special place because the only reason that the Native people, the indigenous people of our state have survived in this climate as long as they have is because we do put those relationships first. We value working together, sharing, taking care of one another, respecting one another, and we work together too. We always have worked together. And even as, more broadly as a state, I feel like, right now our state is in a very tumultuous political time. And it's really hard. And whenever there's issues that kind of divide our state, it's really hard to watch that because, ultimately, we have all survived here because we do take care of one another and we do work together. And so I think the relationships, and we're a much smaller population. And so fewer people, pretty, high, climate challenges, logistical challenges. We're spread out all across our huge state. And so, but I think we inherently, and I maybe am, biased here, but we inherently do value our relationships. I want to say more, but of course I can't really say. I haven't lived a whole lot of other places. But so I think here, maybe people are more likely to want to focus on those relationships. And in that case, having someone there like me that is, at the end of the day, I don't get too attached to outcomes beyond I want everyone to have a positive experience and to connect to each other and to kind of come to a place where they're finding that common ground and approaching things with an open mind. And so with that being the focus for me and focusing on those, helping those relationships to grow, it does make a difference. And I feel like, especially in our state, we may gravitate towards that method more than just let's present the facts and go home.
Because it always comes down to the relationship. Mm-hmm. And it's really hard to have a relationship if you can't communicate with each other. So, absolutely, again, just thrilled to death about all of the success that you've had in being able to help all of those relationships come together. And now, a quick message from the sponsor of this episode of the Native Business Podcast, Uqaqti Consulting and JoyHuntington.com. Uqaqti Consulting is a statewide communications and community relations firm serving a variety of public and private sector clients. Joy Huntington, Uqaqti Consulting's president and principal consultant, has lived in rural Alaska for 15 years and has an in-depth understanding of socioeconomic, cultural, environmental, and political issues that face rural communities. Uqaqti Consulting brings positive energy and promotes meaningful relationships for projects and companies across Alaska through effective communications, outreach, and facilitation efforts. Joy Huntington, who has received the Alaska Federation of Natives President's Award for Future Leadership and the Doyon Limited Future Leadership Award, has also been featured in Native Business Magazine as one of the 2019 Native Business Top 50 Entrepreneurs. She is very involved in bettering Native communities and recently launched the Joy Huntington brand of products and services to facilitate her work across Indian country. Her services include motivational speaking, youth engagement, career planning and coaching, journaling workshops, mentoring women in business, and entrepreneurial workshops. For more information on Uqaqti Consulting, please visit uqaqti.com, uqaqti.com. And for more information about Joy Huntington, please visit joyhuntington.com today. That's joyhuntington.com today. If you'd like to sponsor the Native Business Podcast, please email us at sponsor@nativebusinessmag.com. And now we return you to the Native Business Podcast. I think Carmen
absolutely
had a couple of things that she wanted to go
I
to.
just wanted to, as a Native woman, I so appreciate your positivity, your energy, your professionalism. We actually were on a panel at the Native Business Summit together for professional development. And what was really awesome to me was that it was awesome and it was an honor because you decided to launch your new business there. And so it was a really awesome and exciting launch. So just talk a little bit about that.
Joy Huntington brand of products and services.
Yeah, let's talk a little bit about that.
And ladies and gentlemen, Joy Huntington.
Thank you. So, yeah, the timing, and I honestly have to tell you both that while I knew that publishing my writing and putting my public speaking, motivational speaking, and coaching services out into the world has been kind of an inevitable thing for me. Like, I knew at some point that would happen. But do you know why it happened this May?
Why?
Because of the Native Business Summit.
Wow.
I think that's where I should have like a clapping track.
Wow.
Yeah, I know. Like applause, fireworks.
Cue the applause now. Clues bombs.
So when I also was in a video at so Rez also had me in a video that they presented. I wasn't able to attend their conference though. And so, but with going to the Native Business Summit, I was sort of, and I am driven by positivity and by, wanting to bring people together, but also I've become a pretty savvy, business person along the way, which has been really fun and a huge challenge for me. And it's really exciting. But, just from a strategic point of view, I was thinking about, okay, what am I going to bring to the Native Business Summit? I could bring Uqaqti materials and introduce myself through Uqaqti. And at the end of the day, I was just thinking about being in this, in this space with Native business leaders from across the country and entrepreneurs and just the kind of networking that we would be doing at a more national level. With that being the case, it just didn't feel like Uqaqti would really get much traction because it's really an Alaskan focused company, even though I am willing to bring those services beyond Alaska. It just might not, get as much traction because, what I've done so far has really been focused in the state, and I'm very, happy with that, and we're plenty busy in Alaska. And so, with that being said, going to the Native Business Summit, I wanted to, it kind of felt like an opportunity to bring something new that would potentially get more traction on a national scale and potentially the networking that was going to happen there. Because for me, being a small business, traveling out and paying everything that kind of, there needs to definitely be, a return on that aside from just enjoying myself and getting to hang out with both of you. I wanted it to really be be a strategic business decision as well. And so that was the impetus. I was out on a trip with my mom in April and just decided that, you know what I'm going to bring to the Native Business Summit? I'm going to bring my Joy Huntington brand. And so I built the brand with my marketing creative team here in Fairbanks in 10 days because we needed it done by the time I flew to Tulsa. And so, that's just kind of a side note on the timing. And so, and so you both have had a very significant role, and the Native Business Summit had a very significant role in me launching this year. And so thank you for that and creating that space and opportunity for me to have this platform and to actually run with something that really is my dream.
Well,
wow.
I feel like we should have the cowbells and we should have all of this. So we'll just, we're so happy for you and continue to see the evolution.
And that's exactly, that was exactly our hope for our Native Business Summit. So to bring people together, to network, to build these bridges and, so that absolutely what we hoped for Native business.
And we should let folks know a little bit more about some of the things that, you've got motivational speaking that you're now doing, working with youth, career planning and coaching, journaling workshops, and we'll get into that in just a second, mentoring women in business, and entrepreneurial workshops. And of course, joyhuntington.com. What an amazing website name, just from a business person to a business person. You always want to make it easy for people.
Thank
you.
You
can't get much easier than joyhuntington.com. But speak a little bit about, and I know that we're coming up on our 45 minutes, so I want to get to at least 3 things here before we wrap up this episode. Talk a little bit about journaling and what that's meant to you, just, because it is about balance, right? It's about balance from work, life, family, spiritual, everything that makes you as a person. Talk a little bit about your journaling.
Absolutely. No, and that has been the fundamental tool for me in everything that I've done. So if I would love to, get to know people better that are listening, to spend more time, because my story is pretty interesting. I went from getting expelled from boarding schools in Alaska and getting into all sorts of trouble to making some pretty huge life changes at age 15. And I started journaling when I was 16. And that same year, I applied and got accepted to a private college prep school, international school in Sedona, Arizona, and flew out of Alaska, left Alaska on my own at age 16. And worked really, really hard out there, overcoming, me kind of coming in behind because of my problems I had already growing up in my last few years of school. I had, failed miserably. So I had to catch up and try to keep up with the other students. And so I worked through all of that fear, insecurity, low expectations of myself to just kind of, stay positive, stay focused. And journaling was a huge part of that time of my life. And ever since then, for the last almost 20 years that I've been journaling, I've worked through the fear. When I'm out there taking these risks and pushing myself to that next level, it's through journaling that I'm able to cope with the fear that comes with that, and the self-doubt, and the I'm not smart enough, I'm not good enough, who am I to think that I can go after these huge accomplishments and huge challenges. And so journaling early on convinced me to kind of leave the comforts of home and go on this huge adventure, take this huge risk and go to that school. And from there, I went to Dartmouth, and same thing. I was coming in behind. I wasn't as, quote, smart or prepared as the other students. I wasn't, coming from as wealthy of a background as the other students. I was living in a small Alaskan village without running water in my home. And I was hanging out with, trust fund kids, and their grandfathers had gone to Dartmouth and their fathers had gone to Dartmouth. And so it was a huge leap for me. And so journaling was always my way of processing that insecurity and those doubts, and just kind of building my confidence and talking myself through those challenges. And it was, that was a big part of me being able to do those things and succeeding. So I ended up graduating with high honors in 2006 and spending time in South Africa and working in DC and doing some really cool things. But had I not been able to talk myself through the doubt, I may not have ever left Alaska. So journaling, and that's why I want to share that with people, because, what I've been able to do now with Uqaqti and being a Fairbanks City Councilwoman and launching my new business, I'm still journaling about those self-doubts and those fears. That hasn't completely gone away, but this tool completely changed my life because it really was me holding myself accountable. And if I was afraid, I was writing about what I was afraid of and trying to rationally think through some of these anxieties and insecurities that we all have. It's just a matter of, are we going to correct those fears and work through them, or are we going to let them hold us back? And so journaling for me is just, it has been amazing. And it's really kind of opened the doors for me to go out and take these risks. And I always say that without taking risks, without taking the extraordinary risks that I took, I would not have built the extraordinary confidence that I have.
Wow. That's
and
powerful.
Journaling helped me do that.
That is so powerful. Thank you for sharing. Let me ask you this. What advice would you give to an entrepreneur that's just starting out?
I think that, coming back to the whole, believing in yourself more than anything. I think that faith in yourself, because, things are going to get hard and you are going to run into some walls and people may doubt you, but staying positive and staying true to that faith in yourself and, knowing that you are capable of overcoming any challenges, because the challenges just grow you. The challenges just help you to learn and help you to become more savvy. And that's a big part of our process. And so I think, of course, coming back to believing in yourself, but also building a network around you, building those relationships. And I think that is what I naturally did early on, because I care about people and I'm naturally kind of focused on relationships anyways. That skill set and that time that I took to thank people for mentoring me and taking time to have coffee with someone just to kind of connect with them, it has always provided this foundation for me, for my business, that has kept things, has kept me very, I think, positive and supported along the way, because I have these people around me that I have invested my time in, and they care about my success. There's other people that are invested in my success because I've built those relationships. And so I think, not giving up on yourself and believing in yourself, of course, which I know it sounds cliche, but it's so important. And then building those relationships, because even when you have those slow years, or you have that downtime, I feel like the people around you will help to keep you motivated and keep you going. And that's what's happened for me.
And it's a really important point that you bring up, because especially for entrepreneurs, beginning entrepreneurs, we like to call them pre-entrepreneurs, folks that haven't even made it to the startup stage yet, that have an idea, they just don't know how to get to that place. And as they become entrepreneurs, as they actually take that step forward, it reminds me of something, and not to do the gratuitous football analogy, but when you really coach them, and we've got our little guy that's getting ready to start his first year of tackle football, and I already know, having coached his older brother, that one of the hardest things to teach the kids after they've been told for so many years, don't hit, don't be physical, don't, hey, you guys, stop wrestling, things that you feel like the kids are going to get hurt. Now they have all these pads on, and part of the game is actually engaging, and it's actually, making contact and tackling somebody. It's amazing when you watch them go through those first tackling drills. The first thing they'll do is run right up to each other and stop and turn away. And it's so counterintuitive to what we have inside of us when we get into business to seek out moving forward through the storms, running towards the storms, running towards the roar. And you have to be confident. All of the things that you just said, you have to have those things if you're going to be successful, because you have to know that you've done your work. You have to believe in the plan. You have to believe in what you've done in the way of all the diligence, and trust in your competencies and capabilities. And yet there's nobody there. There's sometimes it feels like there's no net, but yeah, for all those entrepreneurs out there, it's so important that they learn through, all of the big things take place before you step on the field, before you go through actually getting into the war. You've got to prepare and be in the war room and make sure that you've got an amazing plan. And it sounds like, Joy, you've done that amazingly well. And I think as we wind down here, this 5th episode of the Native Business Podcast, we always like to close it out, and we will be closing it out throughout the future episodes, with asking you, and many that will come after you, what's your native business meant to you?
Well, my native business, so I'm going to Uqaqti, what Uqaqti has meant to me, and I'm going to talk about Uqaqti for a second. I never dreamed that by all of the hard work and sacrifices that I've made, and just, that sheer grit that I had to have to build Uqaqti to where it is today, I never knew that Uqaqti was going to open the door for me to publish my writing. And I've wanted to publish my writing since I was like 13 years old. And so through Uqaqti, I now am launching the Joy Huntington brand, as you know, and a part of that brand is me publishing my poetry, self-publishing and marketing my poetry, and the book that I wrote in 2011, which is called Backbone Girl. And so owning my own native business has honestly provided the financial security and foundation for me to start building my own brand and publishing my writing and doing the motivational speaking and bringing the hope and inspiration to people that I've always wanted to do. But I could never do that until I had a secure foundation for my life and for my family, providing for them. And so Uqaqti, my business, has really opened this door and made it possible for me to do what I've always dreamed of doing, which is sharing my writing and sharing my motivational speaking with the world. So I this year have learned what having a successful business can mean, and how much that can really open doors for you that you may not have even really expected.
You were who you'd been looking for. You've allowed yourself through your hard work to do the things that you dreamed to do.
Exactly.
Amazing.
And everything that thank you. And everything that I am able to do through the Joy Huntington brand would not be possible without Uqaqti Consulting. So it's amazing to me.
That's beautiful.
Let that resonate. Let that resonate. All of the students, the young people, the people that have been in business for years who are going to immediately, that's going to resonate with them. So much of what you've said today is inspiring, motivating, for future business people, but absolutely inspirational for folks that are out there making their business work for them every single day, because it is about us realizing our own potential, our own capabilities, our own competencies. And Joy, you represent that. And thank you for what you do in the way of your story and sharing it here on the Native Business Podcast, for all the other entrepreneurs out there, for all the other amazing Native women in business across this country, and for being such an amazing standout in the state of Alaska and across Indian country. And we just wish you nothing but continued success. The Joy Huntington brand, we want to make sure that folks know to go to uqaqti.com, uqaqti.com, and also Joy Huntington, JoyHuntington.com, and learn more about all the great things that you're doing. Book you, bring you more prosperity.
Yes.
Because we got to get rid of this whole thing that there's only so much room at the top, and that if we help somebody else, that is some way defeating our own goals
Absolutely.
and dreams and pursuits. The more that we do for each other, the more that we raise that tide, and that raises all ships, and we do better.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for joining us. And it's also one of the things that we didn't talk about, but you're a mother of 2, and showing them that you are living your life with purpose.
Huge.
That's everything. So
huge.
Thank you so much for sharing. And I just wanted to acknowledge that really quickly, that you're a busy, ambitious woman. So thank
Joy.
you.
Any new things you've got some great things coming up you're celebrating here very soon?
Yeah, so we are, not only am I excited about this podcast, but I'm going to be having my first big event here in Fairbanks on my late father's 65th birthday here in Fairbanks. And so I'm going to bring a lot of people together. Of course, you're both invited. Now you're on the spot. It's on the podcast. It happened. You need to be there.
Thank you.
And I'm going to be celebrating the Top 50 Entrepreneur Award. And I also received the Indigenous Business of the Year Award for Alaska from the Yukon First Nations Chamber of Commerce for 2018. I just got that award recently, though.
Amazing.
And kind of, thank you. And officially kind of having my launch party for the Joy Huntington brand. That's coming up. And just continuing to build the brand with purpose. And it's been a little bit of a lull here, but we're going to start getting more put out on the Facebook page. So please like me on Facebook, the official Joy Huntington page, and expect more in the future. And I am available for public speaking bookings. So I would love to have people reach out via the website or message me on the Facebook page. And I'd love to come out and bring some inspiration and positivity and just encouragement to the people out there that need that hope. I feel like there's so many that are struggling, and if I can help share my story in a meaningful way, that's really what I'm all about. And so I would love those opportunities to be presented.
Ladies and gentlemen, Joy Huntington. You can reach her at joyhuntington.com. Thank you so much for being on the show today. My name is Gary Davis, and this is the amazing...
My name is Carmen Davis, and thank you so much for listening to the Native Business Podcast.
Episode 5.